Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
In today's episode 148 of Podcast 2 for 1. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you're updated on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2for1 studios, the best place to consume the content. And of course, if you didn't know, and let's be honest, you probably didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. That they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow!
Kapow! Let's take a moment of silence real quick, Daniel. A good 5 seconds just to acknowledge how clean that one was. There was no stuttering. It was a good opening. We should just next time we should just use that opening. I'll just move my mouth, and then you just play that.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll just have to
no one will notice.
A robot voice for the episode 149. That kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or we just re-record you saying that every time, and so it's just
there we go.
A weird pause, and then you say it in a different tone, like in a different volume,
Perfect.
in a different room, so it sounds completely different. Yeah, it's great.
I love it. Yeah, no, I like it. Anyway, we are recording The Last of Us episode 1, season 1 review, and this was an exciting one for a lot of different reasons. There's some ties to our filmmaking. I feel like our film history, and then our love of video games, and then also just our love of television, especially good television. So, and there's a lot of little connections here. So let's get into it, Daniel. I think one of the bigger connections for this is just the idea that Craig Mazin wrote this show, and he's a showrunner, and he even directed the first episode, which is pretty fun. I had the honor of seeing Craig and John August, I think twice, in California.
I got to see him once.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for Script Notes.
I saw them at the Writers Guild Theater.
That's awesome. Yeah. I saw him at the I don't remember. It's the Awful Theater, though. I just don't know why people like it. They're everywhere in LA. I can't think of the name of the theater. It's how bad they are. I can't think
the
of
old
the
Egyptian ones or something.
No, I like the Egyptian. This is these are made to be great theater seats. I'm like, if you're an alien, maybe they're awful. They're the most cardboard. Anyway, I can't think of the names. But I for us, Script Notes was one of the first things that was introduced, at least to me, when I started my career at UCA, and the filmmaking thing. And it was one of those things I wasn't always consistent with them, but it was always something. I still get updates. It's one of the 5 podcasts I still every week. It's out. I don't listen to them that much anymore, but it's always there. It's like your friend, that you're always friends with, but you touch base every now and then. So listening to them and then watching their journey, also just kind of going through, and then Chernobyl come out. To be fair, I had not seen Chernobyl. I know it's amazing. I need to watch it.
Humanity.
I know. That's what I keep hearing. I agree. I really want to watch it. Maybe I will after we finish The Last of Us. But Chernobyl obviously put Craig Mazin kind of on a different level, right? He started getting Emmy nominations and Golden Globe nominations and all these other things.
I think he won a few Emmys too.
I think he won. I think he won the big ones, like Best Drama and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So it kind of really put them on a different kind of level, right? And it's critically acclaimed, and he was always advocating on the podcast. He loves video games.
Yes,
and he's always talking about his favorite video game series is The Last of Us, and how it should be like a TV show. And lo and behold, Neil Druckman, can't say the video game director, or the showrunner, so to speak, of The Last of Us universe, or Naughty Dog, they teamed up with Craig Mazin. And of course, when this news broke, it was kind of everyone, I'm not sure a single person was upset by this news. I think it was just oh my God, it's so incredible. And then you started getting casting stuff like Pedro Pascal, and then Bella Ramsey. Of course, Pedro is from The Mandalorian. Bella, we know her probably primarily from her role in Game of Thrones. Yes. As the little, I want to say the Lady of the North. I can't think of her character name.
Was she the Queen of Bear Island? Was that it?
Yeah.
I think it was
But she had so much presence as this little girl, commanding all these men around, and she was just fantastic to watch on screen. So that's kind of the filmmaking part, Daniel. I think the other part is it's a video game first, right? There's a thing called the video game curse. I would kind of argue we've had a lot better adaptions the last 5-10 years than we did previously. Things like Sonic the Hedgehog, which I think they're both movies are very fun. Those are great adaptations. Detective Pikachu is a great one, I think. I of course still love the OG Mortal Kombat, and I enjoy the new one for the most part. But there's things like Rampage, and there's 1,000 of them, right? But it kind of, I don't know. I feel like the video game curse had been broken, but I feel like people are saying it now like this is the first time. I'm not sure I agree with that.
I think it's as far as like being Emmy-worthy television. This is like award-worthy. I think that's what people are talking about. Like because I think what the idea is that, like, okay, Halo is one of the most famous, I would think, in my opinion, one of the most cinematic, epic video game stories. And then you got a TV show that was serviceable, actually, in some areas, but so far from what it was inspired by that it feels like it just shouldn't have existed. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing is like, you've got to compare, like, how amazing is the IP in video games? How beloved is it? How esteemed is it? And how does that match up with the adaptation? And I think even like Mortal Kombat, while you're right, that was a good movie. I think, and a lot of people that were Mortal Kombat fans liked it. I'm not sure that like the hardcorest of Mortal Kombat fans would say like that was it. That was the adaptation that really brings what the magic of Mortal Kombat is. It brings it from video games into a screen.
I think maybe the first game, yes, actually, but it's also different because we were talking about they're totally different. Like to your credit, and I agree with this, that like Last of Us versus a Mortal Kombat adaptation, those are just totally different universes, literally. Yes. But just in terms of adaptation, the criteria that needs to be met to be successful. I mean, the bar is much lower for Mortal Kombat, just on a story level.
Well, to be fair, I would say it's easier to adapt The Last of Us because you're taking scripts that were written like movies.
You're right.
Characters that were written like movie characters. Here's the thing. We're going to get more into the analysis of this episode 1 in just a second. But like, I have a theory that by the end of this, The Last of Us TV show may be the best possible way to consume the story of The Last of Us than playing the game. Because
I 100% agree.
I have a feeling that because I think what Neil Druckman and what Naughty Dog are doing is incredible. And I think it should be lauded. It's not my kind of game because it feels every time I play one of those, I feel like I would just rather watch an 1.5 to 2 hour movie of this story than have to play through all of these, what feel like stretched out moments that would never happen in a movie that you now just need to add gameplay. So like, Now we just need to watch Nathan Drake platform for 20 minutes instead of like what would happen in the movie, which is he gets there and like you get to the next part of the story, which is what you're there for. And so I have this theory, and especially we can get to when we talk about The Last of Us Part 2, I have a theory that like the reason that game failed in some ways in what it was trying to like thematically say is because it was a game. And that I think that story, what The Last of Us Part 2 does, if you just take that and put it into a visual medium where you're not giving the audience like a role in the story, you're not making them carry out whatever these characters are supposed to be doing to continue like the drama. I have a feeling that story is going to land so much better for people that may even didn't like the second game. And I'll say I've not played either. I'm coming at this blind.
Yeah. And I want to be a little careful with Last of Us Part 2 because I've been waiting very patiently to play that game. So no story, no true story beats. No. I know one, unfortunately, but
there's one that was yes.
I know one, and I don't think it's controversial. The one I know, and the thing is, what would be interesting too is like I've talked to Matt about this because Matt knows the whole thing. Matt has refused to play Last of Us Part 2, not for any reason, just because his stance on the first game was kind of like, and it's kind of mine too. I just replayed the first game, the new 4K remaster, or the PS5 version, I should say. I played, and the first time I played it was the original remaster for PS4. It came out on PS3 originally. So Naughty Dog, it feels like they're in the Last of Us business now lately than more of the Uncharted, which back up. Naughty Dog is like my favorite video game developer of all time, not because of Last of Us, but because of Jack and Daxter and because of Uncharted. Like those two things are the creme de la creme for me for video games. I like cinematic video games. I like kind of being on rails. I like going through like an extended movie experience, but something I feel like I'm in control of. And I feel like Uncharted does that the best. It's like playing Indiana Jones, and I feel like I'm making choices, but they kind of blow me away in the fact that they're controlling things, but I feel like I'm doing it. I still haven't figured out some things they've accomplished. It's still pretty incredible. Last of Us, though, I remember playing it, and here's the thing: just on a level, right? It's like analyze the movie. It's like, okay, the cinematography, 10 out of 10. The music, 10 out of 10. The performances, 10 out of 10. Like the graphics, 10 out of 10. Gameplay, it's probably 10 out of 10. Like, I mean, like for what they're trying to accomplish, right? It's slower, it's more methodical. Right. You're kind of looking at the environments. I would say that their cut scenes are kind of, and there's one thing they did in the show that's very reminiscent of this that the game does too, but I think it's actually an issue, but in the game at least, but like, it's more stealthy. There are fights and stuff, but it's not like, it's like the opposite of Uncharted, in some ways. And I feel like I think it's like, again, 10 out of 10. I could see it. I see what you're talking about, but it's not, I don't know. It just doesn't blow me away like I think it has everybody else. I don't know why.
It's an interesting game. I think some of this we have to honestly save for like the finale of the show, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't played the game yet, because the finale of the show is a big deal. Finale of the game is a big deal.
It is,
and it's a big moment. But getting, if you don't mind, like drilling into just this episode 1. I just want to say, I think first of all, overall, I think it is really well done. I think as soon as that first scene came up with that like 70s talk show thing, like as soon as taking 30 minutes almost to set up the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, to have Joel with his daughter and all of that stuff. I think it was it felt like methodical, patient storytelling that knew it how to keep your attention, that knows how to, bring in the big moments and make them hit.
And like, I think, as a small counter, that all happens. There's no 70s thing, but in the game, that all happens in the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and I think you have to do like it would have felt really unsatisfying if we saw Joel lose his daughter in 5 minutes. Like the way they drew it out. Like I knew she was gonna die just because I kind of know what the future is, and And I was just kind of like, how long are they going to draw this out? Because I'm just kind of waiting for my heart to be broken somehow. Like, how are they going to tragically kill his daughter? Because I don't know the detail. I don't know. I know big plot points about this movie or this story, but I don't know details at all, really.
Well, we'll get to that. Yeah, go on.
And so, I just think the show set up everything well. I think the only kind of like issue I had a little bit with like the second half of the episode, or like when we got to the present day, is that I felt like sometimes the show was operating as if everyone had played the game and like everyone should know what they're talking about and who they're talking about. Like the way they would cut between groups of characters in very similar looking interiors. Like there was several times where I'm like, are these Fireflies or these Fedra? Because I have no idea. You know what I mean? Like, and it kind of kept interchanging cut. Like it was intercutting between this group of people doing something and this group of people doing something. And I was just like, at times I was like, I feel like if I knew the game and I knew like, oh, that's whatever her name was, Marlene or whatever. Is she in the game? Marlene?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So like if I played,
it's pretty 1-to-1.
Yeah. So if I played the game, I would know immediately who I'm looking at. Right, I would know immediately who these characters are. Like, oh, that's Fireflies because that's Marlene, or that's, you know what I mean. But like, I don't, and so it was a little confusing for me, a little bit. And I think that's a difficult thing when the show is being made by like everyone that's played the games probably relentlessly. I think there is that slight, maybe blind spot of like, it can be difficult to make something for someone that has no experience with the IP, that is completely accessible to someone that has no experience with the IP, when you're kind of making it from this like nostalgia for the IP. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
It was just one thing that kind of I felt wasn't perfect.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. On the other side of it, though, granted, I have played the game, so maybe this is leaking into my experience, but I played the first game twice. So I was watching it, and I was really trying to pay attention. Watch the show and enjoy it, but almost like I was really analyzing the crap out of it. Like, what is Craig saying? What is like, how is he delivering information about the Fireflies? Because in the game, it's a game thing, right? You're picking up items and you're picking up notes and you're picking up, that's a big part of the game is picking up diaries and picking up pieces of paper and reading all these backstory. So I kind of felt like I was like, okay, like, I knew the Fireflies were going to come up eventually in the episode. I knew that Marlene would probably be in there, but I felt like, I was like, oh, I felt like they were giving enough information, but like kind of like example, the first time you see the Firefly symbol, they're painting over it, and I was kind of like, okay, like I see like, I was really trying to think about it. Is this my first time going into this universe period? And I was like, okay, it's like we know they're covering up the symbol. We don't know what the symbol is yet, but I know what it is, So like I was trying to track both sides of it because also Kimberly's watching it next to me. And she's not a big action person. She likes thrillers. Sure. She likes, those kind of things. And I was also kind of like, because I'm going to watch this every week, whether I like it or not, because I want to know I want to know the zeitgeist. I want to know how well they stick the landing. And so I was really hoping she was going to at least like it a little bit so we could watch it together. Sure. So I'm kind of like sitting there and I'm kind of like, just kind of trying to vibe her, how she vibing through it. And I kind of disagree. I think they kind of delivered a little bit of information in a smarter way. That my main issues are kind of like my issues with the game is that it feels like, I don't know. I guess people credit the game with this, but I feel like we've had games before then that exhibited quality acting, quality emotion, quality, it feels like they're really story is over gameplay, right?
Yes.
And it's not complicated story. It's not complicated plot. It's like, good acting and good emotion. It's like emotion is what they're going for.
Well, I think what The Last of Us, to me, when I look at it like in the gaming landscape, what it did was it introduced a new genre to that style of gaming. I mean, we'd only had Indiana Jones-esque action movies like that. Or maybe if you want to count maybe like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe some of the Quantic Dream stuff is similar-ish, where it's more of a movie, it's more of a visual story with dialogue choices. I don't know, but I guess like when I look at The Last of Us, it's like it introduced a tragedy, like a pure tragedy. I don't think you can really describe like what is the genre? It's a drama tragedy in my ways. Like, sure. Like in terms of like the narrative. Yes, it has action. Yes, it has violence. Yes, it has gameplay and characters. But you're right, it's not a complex story. It's a story about two characters that have a lot of feelings for each other and them trying to figure out how to balance that in a world that's gone to hell. You know what I mean? And I think that's the brilliance of it, is that they didn't try to make it this super complex thing. It's like, let's tell a simple story, but let's tell something that gamers are not used to. With games, we're used to like fist pumping action or, like sexy or sporty, like going into something and like, okay, you might cry by the end of this. Most gamers, mainstream wise, they haven't experienced that and probably aren't looking for it. Yeah, in the indie games and in the small sectors, niche genres of gaming, they're doing that and have been doing that. And there's a lot of people that love that. But as far as like mainstream, capital G gamers, AAA, big budget, blockbuster, buying out all of the TV ad times on the billboards, like a AAA game that went to this place emotionally, it's hard for me to think of other games that either went there at all or went there and was successful in delving into those difficult emotions.
You're not wrong. But here's the kind of the funny thing or the irony in all this, I think.
Sure.
I think you're right on everything you said. I'll agree with you. But I feel like we've had TV shows that have tackled this exponentially. A good example would be the first two seasons of The Walking Dead, specifically in this kind of genre. So it's kind of like,
I'll argue first, second season. The second season was the fucking farm. So I have the first half of season.
It's slow. The first half of season 2 is pretty slow. That's the Frank, whatever you want to call the Frank Darabont time period, which is season 1, and I think the first half of season 2. That's what he did.
That's yes, it was really good.
Yeah, so it's like will the show give us
Yeah.
give us something different enough that we haven't already seen 1,000 times? Now it did that in the game verse, in the game space, but now it's like we're taking it to live action. It's like, well, we've kind of done this a lot, and I guess some things, there's obviously story beats, there's obviously emotions and things that are universal that we can we literally retell the same things over and over: grief, sorrow, happiness, all these things. So they can, if they do it well, obviously they can, they can tap into it again, and it's just a little different paint job, right? I mean, instead of, it's what another different aspect like The Walking Dead is, like the zombies end up becoming more fungi, more monster-ish, right? Which is exciting and fun and visually fun, which I'm kind of afraid of the budget. You see like the big one coming out, it doesn't look as great as some of the other ones. Like some of the shots of like because there's stages, right? We'll call them like small bear, papa bear. Small bear is like, it looks really great. It's like practical and it's like human size, and the papa bear is like fucking gigantic. So it's like you have to do like CGI, right? So I already see the budget breaking already a little bit in like the in some of that stuff. But anyway, I don't know. I just, when it's all said and done, are people going to be like, man, this is like is this different enough? Or are they going to be like, or is this amazing because it's based off a video game and they did a good adaptation of a video game? Because like, there's like memes going around where it's like, I mean, shot for shot almost, of like the opening of the game and like the opening of the show, and it's like the same burning house, the same like signs in the background that's like on our side of the road. It's like verbatim some of the shots, and there's something that's like literally the same shot but flipped. It's like he was on the left side of the frame in the game, and he's on the right side of the frame of the show. It's like that kind of stuff. And I don't know. It's very interesting, I think. And we still haven't really got into yet, like the characters, and like we're kind of talking more about the game versus the show and the medium itself. But I'm curious about that aspect of it going forward.
Well, and I think that was something I was when Catherine and I were watching it. We watched it last night. I was telling her like, when it started, that first 30 minutes too, like before we got to present day, what a part of that, what really got me into it and really exciting was it felt like this is a level of excellence in zombie fiction that I haven't seen in a while. And we'll see by the end of it, if ever, right?
Since the beginning of The Walking Dead, probably. I mean, like,
but to me, the way they're starting it feels like this could eclipse that very easily. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of zombie fiction, for me.
I agree.
I think the idea of the fungal infection is just a really cool, like
it's way more interesting
concept
than regular zombies.
Yes, it's so much more interesting. I love that thing where they saw like the fully, like the one where the virus had fully run its course and the guy was like a mushroom wall on the wall thing.
Love it. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and I think,
and that's the fun parts of the game is finding out about that. I mean, like that's something like, it's funny that now that's mainstream more so than it was even just with the game, because I've been telling people about that fungus and the ants and them crawling up the top of it and spreading the spores for like 10 years. Because I've been telling people that because I learned it through the game like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
no,
like,
it's
I'm like, yeah, catch on, people. Like
it's brilliant mythology, right? It's brilliant mythology.
It's simple.
And I think it is, but it feels so like
it's real.
It makes sense in some logical, like it has this logical flow, right? Like, well, we've seen these plants do this in the wild, so what if they just were able to do it to humans? Versus like, what if this weird disease that no one knows what it's called or where it come from, why it is, just started happening, and then everyone's Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's much more interesting.
It was interesting too. I don't think this is in the games. I could be wrong. Maybe it's in the second one. But they put the little extra tidbit in there about the Earth is warming up, and so allowed them to evolve essentially.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's in the games, but I honestly was kind of like,
it works.
I like it. It's a nice little, thread.
It makes the world feel that much more real, or that much more parallel to ours, which makes it, I think, more gripping. But I just think so far in this first episode, and like I think the zombie parts of this show haven't gotten to their. I think we haven't seen how awesome the zombies can be yet, right?
That's next week.
Yeah. Or and who knows? Yeah, the weeks fall every week. We'll see. So I think it's this thing of like, to me so far, this is A++ zombie fiction. And I've been burnt out on zombies a while. I mean, like The Walking Dead I was following it till like season 3 or 4. And it got me I got so mad at the show that I was still watching it that long almost. I was telling Catherine, I feel like the last time I consumed zombie fiction that I was really satisfied with was like season 1 of Walking Dead or Zombieland 1. Honestly, like those are the last times that like I remember really enjoying something that was zombie, right?
I agree. I think I also stopped right at season 3, season 4.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, this is never going to end. It's going to be the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, it is.
It
turned into a soap opera. It turned into a soap opera with zombies. And that was the annoying part. But I think it is that thing of like, it's been about 10 years-ish, right? About like even maybe 10 or 12 since that, like, I feel like we got that resurgence of zombies like in the 2010, 11, 12s, like when The Walking Dead started.
It's a little different though. We've had so much zombie stuff between Walking Dead now. And like The Walking Dead literally just ended like a month or 2 ago. But they just announced
as far as
2 more spin-offs.
Stuff, as far as things that are like making headlines that have a big following. I think there's been little movies here and there in between, but nothing that's like caught my attention, I guess.
And again, the big thing is it's a different type of zombie. You know, they felt more traditional in the first episode, and those do exist like throughout the game. But the more interesting stuff is the more developed fungi ones because they're cool looking and they're more monstery. And I think it almost doesn't even feel like zombies to me, like, you know, because it's something else. You know, it's just a little different.
It feels like there's almost like a consciousness behind the disease, like, and if all fungus are like kind of a hive mind kind of consciousness, then like it almost feels like there could be some sort of intelligence behind the virus. Like, had the fungus evolved to the point, or they use this to evolve to the point where they have some sort of like consciousness. I mean, I don't know if the game's it, but it's just the premise of how these zombies work that you're like, I mean, that feels somewhat possible. Like that feels within the range, like, because it's a living organism in control. It's not some mysterious alien disease that we don't know about, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
no, I agree.
I think as a zombie show, so far it's A++. And so I think if it can continue to stand on that leg, like if this show can just be an amazing zombie show with really great characters and a really great story, then I think it's a success, no matter how accurately it depicts the rest of the game 1-to-1 to the game, right? I think it is. Yeah. I think you're right though, that it is this thing of like, there is this chance that by the end, is it only just a really great adaptation? You know what I mean? Is it just a great adaptation in a good show, or is it an amazing show, an Emmy award-winning show, a zeitgeist show that everyone talks about, and it's also the best adaptation that we've ever seen? You know what I mean? Like, that's the question. I feel like I don't think it's going to be bad. I don't think this show is going to suck. I don't think so.
One of the more interesting things, and a lot of this is just is confidence on HBO's part, is that they gave the whole season to reviewers before the first episode dropped. And I think I could be wrong, but I think it's still at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Do you think that's because they felt like you needed to watch the whole season to really, like, because it is that thing of like, the finale of this story is like the biggest bang of the story, the most drama, the eclipse of this arc is the finale of the last basically big plot beat. So it is that thing of like, it's all leading to that, you know, and if you don't get that, then you don't really understand the like that event in the end reframes the rest of the show that you already seen up to that point, basically.
It does. I mean, it is a big moment. I'm not sure it's as big as everyone thinks it is.
Maybe not. Maybe I haven't played it. I was just kind of absorbing the murmurs around it.
I think just like the opening was bettered from being a TV show. I think the end is going to be better too, and I think the end's going to hit a lot harder. I think it hit everyone very hard. I think it just hit me a little less hard, but I think it's going to hit me much harder in the TV show, especially if they really ramp up the differences between Joel and Ellie here. I want to last before this, and then we'll get into like little things. I just talk about the characters for a second, just in their performances, and we'll kind of wrap it up. But Another question is, we're kind of in another Game of Thrones situation. I don't think at all that The Last of Us has done in its game verse. I think that if they were smart, it's a huge IP, but they were smart, they might do Last of Us Part 3 and then end the story, right? End the story. And then they can move on to another franchise. If Sony will let them. Yeah. But they had The Last of Us multiplayer coming out, I believe, this fall. We don't really know. That's kind of taken forever. But it's a huge IP, right? And I think it looks like, based on everything we've seen, this is an adaptation of the first game. Season 1 is adaptation of the first game. It doesn't. They could obviously. I haven't played the second game, but it seems to reason to me that they could just adapt Season 2 as the second game. Yes. And it may take another 2 years to come out. Another 2.5 years, kind of like Game of Thrones does, right?
Probably so.
I can see them alternating, like Last of Us and the next year's Game of Thrones.
Plus, Ellie has to age up a little bit in between the game. The actor needs to age up even a little bit in between.
And she will. She's at that prime age where, she is. In 2 years, she's going to look, I think, a lot different. I could be wrong.
I wonder how old she is.
Another thing, too, is she is 19. Whoa, she don't look 19, does she?
She's gonna look, so she's gonna look a lot. Yeah, they made her look really young in this, but she was also really probably young. 17 when they filmed. You know what I mean?
Probably 17 or 18. Yeah. But maybe she just has a small frame, small person. But I'm very curious because also because Neil Druckman, obviously they're Naughty Dog has been working on whatever they're working on besides the multiplayer thing since probably right at the end of Last of Us 2 or whatever. Right. So I wonder, will the game come out first, Last of Us Part 3? Because it took them forever to make Last of Us Part 2, and part of that was because they were working off PS4 technology still.
It's this weird
what's
thing.
What's going to eclipse it?
It's this weird thing of it almost feels like Neil Druckman, his dream job would just to be a filmmaker sometimes.
Yes, it does.
I sometimes just think, and I'm surprised you can't get an opportunity having done everything you've done. I mean, I guess he
did in the fact that he's a showrunner on an HBO show now on the second biggest premiere. Him and Craig are showrunners. Pretty sure.
I didn't know that.
Let's look. I could be wrong. So it was created by Craig and Neil. It's written by Craig and Neil, and
who's executive producer?
Yeah, so maybe Craig is just the
I think he's the showrunner, but I think he helped write it. He helped adapt it, the idea, and probably was there on set a lot. I've had to guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you watch the behind the scenes, normally there's two people talking. It's either Chris or Jonathan Nolan, his wife Lisa Joy, or the Benioff brothers. It's Craig and Neil talking on the behind the scenes at the end of the episode.
So all that to say is, I feel like there's this weird thing of I could almost see the television adaptations of Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 influencing what The Last of Us Part 3 is. You know what I mean? There's this weird because they jump 5 years in between Part 1 and Part 2, I think, or something like that.
Maybe I don't really know.
It's a few years, I know, at least. And then I would assume you expect at least that long of a time jump, maybe before the last one. Who knows? Maybe they could just not do that. But it is that thing of you would think that if that is in the works, which how could it not be? Considering how profitable that IP is, I would be surprised if Sony isn't no, you have to make a third one at least, kind of thing. It's this weird thing of because he seems so just he wants to be a filmmaker. He's doing the gameplay because he has to almost in order to tell a 20-hour film movie in some ways. It's that thing of
fair, the gameplay is pretty rock solid. I mean, it's about as good as it gets. There's things that The Last of Us Part 2 does that's I still think revolutionary in terms of character movement, character reaction, in terms of mechanics of
and realism, how they move, the graphic
how they
fidelity,
touch stuff when they walk by it, and the environment, how they move their hands, it's stuff that doesn't maybe make sense to people who don't play video games, but we went from fucking Pong to now we have characters interacting with real things in the environment, but also not the same every time, right? It's different
Yes.
based on where you're going, your playthrough. Like those things are like next level, you know, and it's like it takes so much thought, you know.
Not to say that the gameplay isn't peak
Right.
gameplay. It is, especially for the genre. It's probably the best maybe that's ever seen in that third person action kind of genre. But yeah, it just makes me wonder. I'm really curious about what does part 3, the game Last of Us, look like? What if they're made at the same time? I mean, like Craig Mazin and Neil Druckman are such buddy. You could just totally see like Neil Druckman being like, let's make them at the same time. Let's release them. You know, let's release the game 3 months and then like 3 months later release the show or something. I don't know.
I could see Craig helped writing Last of Us Part 3. Can you imagine his
maybe he's going to come up with the idea for it. I mean, because I do think like what I know about the narrative of plot 2 is that it does leave the characters in a weird place. Like it is this kind of like it doesn't feel like it's not a happy ending, which neither part feel happy by the end, but it is this kind of thing. It doesn't feel like the end for these characters too. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, it's that thing of like, could within the adaptations of part 1 and part 2, could within that process, Neil find the inspiration for part 3, figure out what they need to do with it. I mean, the very good chances they already know, right? The very good chances they mapped part 3, all these parts out after part 1 was so successful, right? Because it wasn't part 1 at first; it was just The Last of Us. They redid it later and put part 1 on it. At first, it was just.
I feel like he's made this game 4 times. Like
yes.
He made Last of Us.
Yes.
He did the remaster for PS4. They just did the real remake. You know, the remake,
yeah.
Which is honestly to put a gun to my head. Other than the graphics, it feels like the exact same game. It feels like a remaster, not a remake. I mean, like it's
yes.
1 for 1. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know the difference.
And I think the only reason they did that was because of the show. Like that was because they wanted someone to finish this show and want more Last of Us and be able to pick up a PS5 and The Last of Us Part 1 and it be the latest graphics, the prettiest everything, right? They want it to be like, oh, you like that? Well, Sony can let you keep being in that world, and it's the peak of gaming in terms of fidelity, in terms of like all these things.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the other thing too is, you know, well, originally also I think there was a secondary either company within Naughty Dog or a secondary company that was doing it. And then they were like, they took over because that's how it feels like that's how Naughty Dog is. They outsource it and then like they get halfway or almost they're like, you're doing this wrong. We'll finish our baby for you. And I think Neil Druckman come back. They come back in again and finished it again for whoever. And they took the credit. I mean, they made the first game, right? But it is interesting. And like Neil has been living in this world forever. But I think he's also the director for the Uncharted series, at least. Let me check. Let me see,
the original, at least the original 3. He may have done 4.
I think he did do 4, but let me check.
Or maybe he didn't do like the one that came out after 4, a little short one.
I guess. So he became a programmer for Jak 3 and Jak X Comet Racing. He was a designer for Uncharted 1, co-lead game designer for Uncharted 2. And then he wrote Uncharted comic books. He wrote graphic novels for The Last of Us and more stuff like that. And then he was creative or writer for Last of Us and creative director. And then I guess I don't know what happened with Uncharted 3, where that went, but he ended up becoming the director, co-writing Uncharted 4. Said all 3 games were directed by Bruce Staley, with whom Druckman developed a close working relationship with. Okay. I don't know.
So maybe he did 4.
So I guess he wrote it, I guess. He wrote Uncharted 4. So he's been writing.
But The Last of Us is his baby.
That's his baby.
That's the one.
That's his baby. Yeah, that's his baby.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, again, like without trying to share any spoilers, I think from what I read of kind of the critical response to The Last of Us 2, there's a lot of bullshit in the zeitgeist of the conversation of Last of Us 2 because there's a lot of bigotry mixed in with the actual critique that I think it deserves. And so sometimes people want to throw out baby in bathwater and be like, that's all just you know, it's great. You're just all, you know, bigots and there are that. The problem is there's a big group of people on the internet that are that way about that game. But in my kind of parsing through the critical response of critics that I like and I respect, like how they approach games journalism, the kind of problems that they were finding in this, it is that thing of like, those kind of go away if you're not playing a game. If you're just watching characters do these things and you're an audience to their actions, you aren't the actor of those actions. You aren't the one pushing the button to do the thing that the character is doing in the narrative. Yeah. That it actually, like, because of what thematically they're trying to do in Last of Us 2, the idea is that that's almost antithetical to how the gameplay. What you're told to do as a gamer is like what the theme of the game is saying is wrong, and kind of is trying to make you feel bad about, but is like literally like what the objective on the screen says to do. Does that make sense? So like there was a lot of conflict. They're like, we get what they're trying to say, but mixed in with like what this is as a game, it feels very messy. It just feels all over the place. And I think if you just take that out and you're just not a gamer, you're not the one doing the things that Ellie's doing, you're not the one enacting her actions or her thoughts, you're just watching a character on screen go through this and act this way. That whole story, at least what I know of it, might just work great as is. You know what I mean? Like if you just take the involvement of the player out, it'll be really interesting. Like I have no doubt this one will be success. The Last of Us Part 2, how they adapt that and just how well it lands, it's just going to be really interesting because of the kind of divisiveness of that game.
I think you're right. And again, I don't know too much about the plot. I know just enough where I'm kind of like, I think I know some small strokes in that.
Sure.
I don't know why. Just where we're at politically and culturally. I can't wait to play it so I can talk to you about it, because I'm like, was I right? No one's told me anything, but I just have a feeling I know what happens in it. I just have a feeling. Okay. And so
I would be really interested in what you think by the time you play.
And it's not because I've read anything. It's not because I've seen. It's because just when the game was made and just where we go in terms of our writing and all these other kind of things. I was like, I could bet money I could throw a dart, or I could just write a couple sentences and be like, that's what happens in the game, and I have no idea. I just have a feeling. But I'm very curious to find out, and that will happen within the next 3 or 4 months. I will play and beat that game. It's on my list. Yeah. Probably after Last of Us ends, I'll probably start playing Last of Us Part 2, because it'll be a
great place to lead into it. You know. Yeah,
I just did it a month ago. I just finished last one again, but I can't wait to do it again with the TV show. But last thing I'll say about this is that I almost feel like, and again, I'm in the minority here. I feel like the Last of Us series is in this place where is the game. The story is good. The motion is good, but the story is almost not good enough for a TV show. But then I almost think that maybe it is. But I guess like there's this place where it's not an amazing. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I feel like
it's not the most like well thought out, like brilliant. The twist at the end is not. It's something that I think most people will see.
It's not even a twist. Actually. It's not even a twist.
No,
that's what people like. When people talk about the ending, I'm like, like it's not even like this big thing to me. Like, I mean, it makes sense, but I mean, like, I don't. It's not a twist.
I think when people talk about The Last of Us, they talk about Joel and Ellie. That's what I hear people talking about. They don't talk about the story. They talk about Joel and Ellie and those characters. And I think when we talk about what are the best TV shows and the best movies, they're character-focused stories, for me at least. They're stories where we're watching. The Breaking Bad is an amazing show, and the plot is interesting, but what makes that show so engrossing is that we're watching a character study on Walter White and watching him devolve.
That's a poor example, because it is backed by amazing story and plot. I think
at the end of the day,
that's a poor example.
You're right. At the end of the day, the chemistry between Joel and Ellie and the reason for what the ending is, like the reason it happens and how that's even connected to what happens in the first episode. That's where this show lives or dies. right? Like
it does.
And,
No,
and I think
the show lives. The show lives and dies just like the game in the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes of this show.
And just in how well those characters work together. Like when people talk, like when I've heard people that love The Last of Us, they're just like, just going on this journey with Ellie and Joel, just falling in love with him, watching them blossom into this like daughter and son relationship, watching them like that's what they're talking about. That's what they're talking about was so moving. And I think if they nail all of that, then the ending, beyond just being kind of a twist or maybe not being what you thought, has all of this added meaning to it, all this gravitas. It's not just about what happens, it's about why it happens, right? It's about why those characters chose to do what they do and where it leaves them. And I think that's again, when I talk about the tragedy of The Last of Us, or like The Last of Us game was a tragedy, that's what I'm talking about. It's talking about, it makes you fall in love with characters, like fully in love with them, and then feel like real people, real characters, and then watching them make decisions that break your heart, but you completely understand why they're doing it. You don't hate them for it. You don't think they're idiots. You see the progression, the emotional and mental progression that got them there, and you even say, I might do the same thing in their position if I was there. And that's why it's so heartbreaking. I think that if the show can do that, then it can succeed.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be hard on it. I think as of right now, the first game, 10 out of 10. Yeah. It's a 10 out of 10, but not for the reasons why I love games. It's a 10 out of 10 for a lot of other reasons.
Sure.
But, it's not my favorite game of all time. It's not in my top 50 favorite games of all time or 100.
Sure.
But it's still a 10 out of 10, just on a technicality level. And just, I had fun playing it. I played it twice. I bought
execution level.
I'm watching.
They did everything exactly like they wanted to do it.
Yeah,
it's one of those things of like, it may not be my genre, it may not be my cup of tea, but I cannot deny the level of excellence that this has.
Exactly. And I think the chance of me liking the show is higher than me liking the game. So, and also it is kind of always weird seeing like actors playing, like, you're seeing the game character, and then then you're hearing Pedro Pascal, but they're doing a great job. They really are. There's times where I thought, man, this girl sounds just like Ellie from the game.
Does she? I thought she did really good. We didn't get much chemistry. We didn't get much at all, which is Joel and Ellie just on screen together. But I feel like just from the vibes both of those characters have given just on their own in this first episode, it feels like they're gonna gel really good. Like it just feels like they're gonna nail it.
They are, and that's the thing is I know by the end of it we're gonna be singing its praises and everything else. And
I think you're right.
I suspect that it's going to be a huge show, and we're going to get more of The Last of Us in the future. I don't doubt it.
Well, it's the next thing, even just beyond like what the game is, what the story is, what the past is. It's the next thing from HBO's like premiere production department. I don't know what the fuck's going on with HBO and Warner Brothers, how they're organized. I don't think they are organized. I think everyone is flying by the seat of their pants every day. But whoever is in control of making things like Watchmen and Chernobyl and this show, whatever part of HBO is doing that, they rarely ever miss. You know what I mean? And like, it's just another one in line with those. And so it's just nice to have another premiere top of the line HBO show again, because it, like, Game of Thrones was there for so long and then it so quickly went away. And then we got more Game of Thrones this last year was another premiere top of the line HBO production. And just, it's nice to have another one just because at the very least you're going to get a pretty damn good story. Like, they just have a pedigree that is pretty much, I would say, unmatched in terms of like television or on-screen entertainment at all.
I agree. I think HBO Max probably does it. HBO does it the best. They kind of always have. And I think they don't have the volume sometimes others do, but that doesn't matter when you put out stuff like what you just talked about.
Exactly.
The last two things I'll talk about is, again, I was really watching this, trying to feel the temperature of the room with Kimley. Like, I'm going to have to watch this show no matter what. And I would love it that we find another show we have to watch together.
Yeah.
Because that's not always the easiest thing with us.
It's not.
And so, she liked it. there was moments where she was like, talking to the screen, like, don't do that, don't do that. And she was getting invested. And I was like, oh, she's kind of liking this, and
Yeah.
and so I was like, oh, you like it? She was, yeah, I did. And I was like, you want to watch the next week? She's like, yeah, I do. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I mean, I feel like we at least got one more episode in us, at least together.
I mean, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Like in the beginning when that like grandma in the chair started freaking the fuck out.
That was great.
That gave me shivers in a good way. You know what I mean? And
that's the good kind of horror. And
yes.
And the other thing too is that this was an hour and a half. And the thing is, it was 10 episodes, but they end up combining the first two because they felt like it was too boring or something like that.
Well, I think that makes a lot. I mean, where would if this episode ended halfway, it would have ended in a pretty compelling. It wouldn't have been like, I need to see next episode now kind of place. And this one did that much better. I mean, like ending on that shot of the radio and that Depeche Mode 80s song coming on.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, it's so good. You know what I mean? Like that was such a brilliant way. And that shot alone, that reminded me of Chernobyl. That is how Chernobyl did with these it would end on these each episode ended on these somewhat montagey, maybe there's some voiceover, maybe there's montage, and it just felt so thematic. Like it was just wrapping the most perfect bow.
Yeah, it was good.
And whetting your appetite for what's next.
I don't think the radio thing's in the game. I could be wrong, but
it's
when
a
that was
brilliant
happening,
device.
It is. It was, yeah, and it was just how it was set up and the conversation beforehand, and
even just
when it happened, I was like, oh, that's good.
Even just to find a way to diegetically introduce like
music,
like modern, our
good.
Music. It's okay, great. Now you can have Depeche Mode playing out like the end of the episode, and whoever else you want to bring in later,
Exactly. No, it's very smart way of doing it. The last thing I'll say is there's a complaint for the game, and I hope it's not a complaint in the show. This is very minor. We probably should talk about this earlier. But in the game, I think it happens I could be wrong, 5 or 6 times.
Sure.
And there's a moment where you get to a room in the game, and they take a nap. They all go to sleep. And then the cutscene ends and the cutscene starts back up with them waking up. And this happens 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times in the game. And so in the game, I'm like, this is such a weird thing story-wise. It's
to see this happen.
It's trying to be such a movie that I don't think we would ever do that in any movie or TV show where they go to sleep and they wake up 3 or 4 times. It's just a weird way to end the scene because you don't have to, because you can make the story go on in any way you want to.
Right.
I think maybe the idea is that these are real people that need to rest. They're being practical kind of thing. But sometimes practicality goes out the window.
It could also just be them. It could have just been them hiding loading times in the game. It could. I mean, that's a lot of times when you get mandatory cutscenes that you can't skip. That's what's happening usually. If you can't skip a cutscene, it's because the game's usually loading whatever's next.
Well, to be fair, these cutscenes you can skip, and then also that's almost irrelevant for PS5. But this is a PS3 issue, right?
Yes,
PS3 issue.
But it was designed.
Even then, you could still cut. You could still do stuff. But my point is, they do it in the show too. They go in there and it's they go in there. He sits down and she's like, "What are you doing?" "I'm taking a nap." He's like, we're waiting. Whatever. And I was kind of like, is this going to be is this a nod to the game? Is this a thing that other people have thought about? I haven't heard anyone say this. But I'm like, because I felt this way, and I was like, I hope they don't do this, because again, the show is not exactly 1-to-1 to the game, but it's pretty close.
I can't see Craig Mazin. Craig Mazin is so smart and sharp about
don't sleep 3 or 4 times throughout the show. Don't go to sleep and then I don't know. It's just it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I'm curious to see. You know who we should have on? I want to reach out to her. Jess Carson. She just finished writing for the Flash in its final season, and she is a huge. I think it's her favorite game series. Don't quote me. I could be wrong. I think it's her favorite game series is The Last of Us. I don't know that.
I would love to have her on just to kind of review season 1. That would be really cool.
That's what I think. I think we need to have her on towards the end of this stick, and then let's talk about the show. Hope she doesn't watch this episode, because she'll see all my critiques on it, and then she'll destroy me.
That's good. I think that will give us a really balanced panel to kind of analyze the show. You have someone that has no familiarity with the games other than just reading things online, someone that is a die-hard, this is my favorite game ever, and then someone that's played the game that's just a little more lukewarm on it. I think that's
she's a TV writer.
Yes, I think that's a great like we'll get a really interesting conversation out of that.
I think so too. Daniel, how can our listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail. Let us know what you thought of The Last of Us Part 1. Are you coming here from one of these die-hard PlayStation fanboys? What do they call Sony ponies, as they say? Are you one of these drinking Sony sweat anytime you can, just to be closer to it? Maybe sorry. Maybe you love the show. Maybe you already know you're gonna love the show, and like it blew you away. Maybe there's things that we didn't catch that either are problematic or whatever. Write in bit.ly/241mail. We want to hear from you.
What do they call the Xbox people? The no exclusive or
Xbox.
no exclusives ecosystem?
Xbox. It's Xbox and Sony ponies. That's great because it's just like it's the colloquial names for like the Twitter console warriors, which is just hilarious. Like you just click on any official post by any console maker. The first like 40 replies are these like meme dunks, like burns. That is just like the only people talking about this is the other people that like feels that strongly about it's just like rabid fanboys fighting against other rabid fanboys that like the general public doesn't give a shit about. You know what I mean? It's very fun. It's just one of those things where the noise does not match the vitriol, like the amount of people that actually give a fuck.
Well, I don't care about that kind of. It's like DC versus Marvel. It's like I'm a gamer.
Yes.
I own all of them. The only people I have beef with is the PC master race, and that's all because they just they're worshiping their god and savior.
It's that thing of like I hate them, but I also kind of wish I was one of them. You know, I wish I could buy like a $5,000 custom built computer and like play every game at like 4,000 FPS on like
maybe that's where
8K resolution. You know, like with any game control.
That's probably why I'm mad.
I mean, that is like honestly, I kind of see myself eventually going PC because eventually I could then I could play like all the Xbox games and the best of Sony. Because they always get PC.
Well, just let me know so we can cancel the podcast in our business relationship. So we can I get a jump on and send you a final invoice and everything. So
yeah, I'll give you a heads up. Like, hey man, in like 3 months I'm gonna buy a computer. So just like you might want to start like working on your resume, whatever you feel like is necessary.
Good. I'm glad. I like. Hey, 3 months is more than a lot of people give their employees. I guess I'm your employee.
That's right. I'll give you a 3 month notice on building a PC.
Great. All right, man. Well, hey, I love talking about Last of Us, and I'm sure we'll be back on either towards the middle of the season or at least at the very end. Yeah. And we have episode 149 and 150 in the next couple of weeks, and there we have Dr. Bruce Hutchison back to talk. It's like our celebration of our 3-year anniversary, also 150 episodes. And we talk about Avengers Endgame, and we break down the end of Phase 3 and the Infinity Saga, as we always do with script analysis, with script beats, character beats, and just kind of thoughts on the universe in general, how they pulled it off, and maybe a little bit of insight into Phase 4. So that's always a fun one. And then we'll be leading very closely to Ant-Man and the Wasp around the corner. So we have a few things on the docket. And so,
we kind of were in a dead period. Like nothing was out, and everything that came out wasn't great. And it feels like we're kind of starting to pick up. Like Last of Us, it's really nice to have this like 15 days into the new year. We get a brand new like glue your eyeballs to the screen kind of show. But then we get Quantumania in February, right? And then I know there's
and we
more
start
stuff.
Rocking and rolling. Then Guardians in May, Shazam, The Flash.
It's gonna be. I mean, we'll see how much of that comes out this year, but it could be a very interesting, lots to talk about year. Both good, both in terms of like this is really great, and maybe this is not good at all. Kind of conversations. We'll just see how it all goes.
I agree. There's plenty to talk about this year. As you know, I'm not worried about content. That's not even counting the Disney Plus shows. We have like 5 Disney Plus shows, and then also, and starting March 1st is Mandalorian season 3. So, I still haven't watched
the teaser that came out just now.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's more of a trailer than a teaser. But Mandalorian is the built podcast 2-for-1. So
you're right. I mean, that's gonna feel like nostalgia. Just coming back again. That'll be fun to revisit that.
Yeah. If you look on our webpage, it says podcasting for one, the house that Mando built. So that's what
That's
it.
amazing.
That's what it says. It doesn't say that, but it should.
I mean, our sign off comes from it. So
I was going to say, my name is Donovan Thompson,
I'm Daniel Wingfield,
and we have spoken.